The passenger in seat 1A. The morning breeze drifted cool and sharp outside Terminal 3 of Chicago O'Hare, the kind of breeze that whispered of change before anyone even noticed something was shifting. Inside, the hum of fluorescent lights and hurried footsteps gave no clue that history was already unfolding in silence. Nina Ellison stepped into the priority boarding line for Flight 915 to San Francisco. She held a minimalist leather case in one hand, a digital boarding pass pulled up on her phone in the other. Seat 1A. First class. No humidity. No design bag. Just a black blazer, clean dark jeans, low boots, and the quiet self-possession of someone who had nothing to prove. And yet, it wasn't enough. The gate agent, a woman in a navy blazer with perfectly slicked back hair and a plastic smile, glanced at the boarding pass and hesitated. Her gaze tightened, her smile thinning. "Ma'am, this line is for first-class passengers." Nina didn't raise her voice. "I know," she said gently. "That's me." There was no arrogance, just clarity. And that clarity made people uncomfortable, especially when it came from a black woman standing confidently where she wasn't expected. The agent's lips curled slightly into a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Let me double-check something," she said, gesturing subtly to someone in uniform nearby. Within moments, two security personnel approached, one with a clipboard, the other with a watchful look. They weren't rushed. They didn't shout, but their presence alone sent a signal. Something here was out of place. Except it wasn't. Nina hadn't caused a scene, hadn't raised her voice. She had simply stood quietly in the line her boarding pass instructed her to use. "Ma'am, could we speak with you for a moment?" one of the guards asked. Nina nodded calmly, but the energy in the terminal shifted. Travelers kept walking, but now they did so with a certain posture, as if moving around a misplaced item on the floor. She was led to a podium off to the side, not a detention, not an accusation, just a quiet removal. At the podium, the officer typed in her name. Everything checked out. Boarding pass valid. TSA pre-check cleared. Her name, her seat, even her loyalty status executive diamond was listed in bold. But still they lingered. Still they stared. She said nothing. Not out of fear, but out of experience. She had long learned that silence could be a scalpel when wielded by the right hands. Eventually, with a forced nod, they handed her phone back. "You're clear to board." No apology. No acknowledgement. Just the dull ache of dismissal. Nina returned to the gate. The agent, now pale with recognition, handed her pass without eye contact. "Enjoy your flight," she said tightly. Nina boarded, taking seat 1A by the window. The scent of citrus polish and recycled air filled the cabin. A flight attendant offered to take her coat, but hesitated before reaching. Nina handed it over, then sat down and pulled a slim envelope from her bag. She placed it in her lap and ran her fingers over the gold seal. She wasn't here for champagne, or breakfast, or the soft towels. She wasn't even here for the seat. She was here to witness. What no one around her knew was that the woman they tried to remove from first class wasn't a typical traveler. She was the sole stakeholder responsible for final approval of a $4.2 billion equity package tied directly to the airline's parent company. Nina had been named the silent authority over a trust created by her late grandmother, one of the first black women to sit on the board of a Fortune 100 transportation conglomerate. And this wasn't just a flight. It was a final test. As the aircraft reached cruising altitude, Nina noticed it, the slow chill of subtle exclusion. She watched as the attendants offered bottled water with napkins to rows 1 through 4 except for her. No smile, no eye contact. When she finally asked quietly, "May I have some water?" the attendant blinked in surprise, then responded with a clipped, "Of course." 10 minutes passed. No water. But it wasn't about the water. It was about presence. She was there, and that, to them, was a problem. The flight went on. Nina remained poised. Across the aisle, a man finally leaned over. "You okay?" She didn't look at him. "I'm used to it." Her voice wasn't bitter. It was tired in a way that only comes from repetition. She retrieved the envelope from her bag again. Inside, The documents that would finalize the capital injection required to approve a merger between three major airlines. A merger contingent on her signature. The flight attendant returned, finally offering the glass of water. Nina accepted it, thanked her politely, and said nothing more. Later, the cabin manager stopped by. "Ma'am, may I verify your seat again?" Nina showed him the pass. He examined it, then nodded. But she saw the flicker in his eyes. "You don't belong here." That was the unspoken phrase that echoed again and again. But they had miscalculated. Nina wasn't here to pass a test. She was the one grading them. When the plane landed, her name was paged. A mess. "Ellison, please report to Oversight Room B17. A compliance officer named Matthew Carr met her at the frosted glass door. "We just have a few questions about your flight experience," he said with professional caution. Nina entered a small room with a muted television playing security footage. She placed her toad on the table and calmly slid the sealed envelope across. "This is the final authorization for an equity review tied to your airline's future," she said plainly. "You were being audited today. You just didn't know it." Carr's expression cracked. Nina continued, her tone measured. "This wasn't just bias. It was operational liability. I wasn't here as a customer. I was here as a compliance verifier." She tapped her phone, revealing internal surveillance footage synced with audio. Everything had been recorded. The gate agent's hesitation, the lack of service, the whispered comments. Every moment they had judged her silently was now on loud digital display. Carr said nothing. "You assumed I didn't belong," Nina said. "And now that assumption might cost you everything." Word spread quickly. By the time she left the room, meetings had been called. Executives summoned. In the executive lounge, Nina received a message. Eastbridge Trust final hold enacted. Awaiting stakeholder decision. She didn't smile. She simply opened the file. Meanwhile, in New York, Haven Air CEO Martin Kane nearly spilled his espresso when he saw the alert. Stakeholder identity activated. Nina Ellison. He didn't need to read the rest. He knew. Everyone did. Nina Ellison wasn't famous. She didn't need to be. Her influence didn't travel through news outlets. It moved through compliance papers, backroom strategy calls, and silent signatures. And now, the fate of a $4.2 billion merger rested in her hands. By day's end, over 60,000 employees received a memo, flight experience audit, compliance, and cultural competency training mandatory. Nina's story would not be told on a headline. It would be whispered in conference rooms, studied in case law, referenced in business schools. Not because she made a scene, but because she didn't need to. She made a system reveal itself. That night, Nina walked into Haven Air's boardroom, a space of steel, glass, and expensive regret. No one clapped. No one bowed. But they all stood. She placed the envelope on the glass table. "I'm not here for revenge," she said. "I'm here for reform." And then she laid out new terms: third-party audits, mandatory bias training, real accountability. The CEO across from her swallowed hard. "Are we being given another chance?" "No," Nina said. "You're being given a first one." As she left, she turned once more. "Next time someone walks onto your plane with silence, don't assume she's lost. Assume she owns it." The door closed behind her. And somewhere, in an airport terminal filled with noise, the silence she left behind was louder than ever.